Hey, Mark, I noticed.
Good evening and welcome to the June edition of the Tucson Macintosh Users Group meeting. Join us in celebrating many things this month. Apple's WWDC, which we're going to hear about more later. Father's Day, Juneteenth, which is tomorrow, which is a postal holiday. Summer solstice, Flag Day, and perhaps most importantly, Roger's birthday.
Hey,
Happy birthday, Roger.
are we
Uh,
gonna?
Go ahead, Mark.
I
No,
said,
we're
are
not
we
going to.
gonna sing? You
If
you
I
lead.
don't sing, if I don't sing happy birthday, that's a present to the birthday person. As there will be no TMUG meeting in July, we will gather next on Tuesday, August 20th at this same virtual location. In August, we hope to have another Ask Me Anything hosted by Kevin, and another accessibility minute with Chris Wesselman. Our main presentation is going to be on Macstock and perhaps other topics that are yet to be determined. So join us on August 20th, 2024 for that meeting, and have a happy July, and don't set anything on fire with your fireworks. Announcements.
All
Oh,
right.
okay. It's time for me to put where is it? There it is. Put the link to the feedback form again in the chat. Um, Bob Doms said he might be late, and so he sent that to me. Okay. The new virtual door prize that happened in last month, and hello to Melissa, uh, was won by Tom McGorry, and I apologize to him that it took me so long to get the gift card out. Congratulations, Tom. Oh, and Bob Doms has joined us as well. So I did send Tom McGorry a private message through chat, and he evidently didn't read it. So I don't know if he got the gift card yet or not, but I know I paid for it. Okay. Are there other announcements? What's something that I forgot? Stump the chumps
Wanted to buy,
or wanted to buy.
so I'm raising my hand. My wife's iPad is a sixth generation, getting a little old, and she would like something newer. I don't really want to buy brand new, so I'm wondering if anybody has a ninth or maybe eighth generation they want to sell. Doesn't sound like it. Okay.
Okay.
My
I have
wife.
a I have a iPad Pro 10.5 inch, which is just below the level of being able to support the new iPad um, OS. And it really does everything I want it to do. I use it mostly as a consumption device. And I'm torn between buying something new or just getting the battery replaced.
And
So we'll see.
you might want to think about the refurb section of Apple's store, which will have discounts on the newest ones.
Okay.
And on
Yeah,
older ones too. You might, Mark, you might find it, a couple generations back uh,
and you
in the
also may
referred
want to
store.
try Woot.com, which is owned by Amazon, and they sell refurbished products every now and then. They'll have blowouts on iPads or something like that.
What was that
Okay.
name again?
Woot, WOOT.
Woot. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So moving on. Um, welcome everybody. And we're going to have a tech update. And it wasn't sure that Ridge was going to be able to be here. He was off watching a grandchild graduate from high school. And we're also missing Kurt, who is, well, we are missing Kurt. Ridge is here. So you might have to stand me for the security update and the Apple News presentation. I'm going to try to do that, but we'll get back to Ridge in August. So then we're going to have an accessibility minute with Chris Wesselman, and we're going to have the latest news from WWDC with Tony. And if there's time left over after that, we'll have some just general Q&A. So now I'm going to call on Bob to do the presentation for the news updates and security. So Bob needs to start sharing his screen. And I think this is the one I want to share. And are you seeing my?
Yep.
Looks
Good.
good.
Okay, this is one of their new backgrounds that moves around a little bit. So welcome to Macintosh News Updates and Security. Here in the news, we have several items. The EU is going to fine Apple over failure to comply, yada, yada, yada. They're trying to reach inside Apple's pocket. A proposed class action lawsuit accuses Apple of underpaying women. Somebody's trying to reach into Apple's pocket. We talked about the price of Apple stock in the Ask Me Anything session, and Apple is kind of dancing back and forth with Microsoft for most valuable company in the US. And they are definitely above $3 trillion at this point in time. There's the new Vision OS 2 updates seem to be more significant than Apple initially implied. All of these stories have links in the show notes, which are already in TMUG Talk, and you probably have already received that email. Apple is discontinuing Apple Pay later, ahead of new features launching this fall. Japan's parliament has approved a law that will force Apple to force third-party apps on Apple and Google, third-party app stores. 4 more states are jumping into the DOJ's antitrust suit against Apple. You know, what do you get when you have 1,500 lawyers buried up to their neck in sand?
A
The
good
answer is
start.
not enough sand. Apple reportedly is not paying OpenAI to use ChatGPT in iOS 18. Of course, we'll probably never get an official confirmation of that. Hackers access Tile's internal tracking tools and customer data, according to Mac Rumors. So if you have a Tile, you might want to read that article from Mac Rumors. Blackmagic unveils a new camera for shooting spatial videos. This camera reportedly, although it's not on the market and the specs aren't officially broadcast as yet, seems to be 90 frames per second and 8K per eye. That's a lot of content all at one time. And it is reportedly possibly costing something like $20 to $30,000. I don't think I'm going to be buying one of those. Apple ID is to be renamed Apple Account. Okay. Does that really change anything? Probably not. The next Apple Watch Activity Challenge to recognize International Day of the Yoga on June 21st. So those of you who practice yoga, I know that Melissa does that once in a while, do a yoga workout on June 21st and get that wonderful sticker next to this story. Elon Musk's threatens to ban Apple devices over ChatGPT integration. Maybe this should be in the security section or just a rant. I don't know. macOS Sequoia and iPad OS 18 drop support for this. So this is the list of supported Macs and iPads that are going to be not supported in the new stuff coming up in this fall. And right beneath that, the same thing for iOS 11 or watchOS 11. I think this is the last page of our news. There's an interesting article in Tidbits about examining Apple's intelligence, and it gives you an idea of what they plan to do. There's a list of Mac OS Sequoia features that are not going to be available on Intel Macs. Apple Pay antitrust case is about to be settled with a 10-year promise. Looks like it's going to be with Square. At least that's what the photo connected to this implies. Punch through could persuade car makers to adopt next-gen CarPlay. I'm not sure what punch through means, but they're talking about having Apple take over pretty much the whole dashboard with a display and doing stuff for you or offering things to you. And there's a new Apple back to school promo coming this week in the US and Canada. I'm not going back to school this year, so it doesn't affect me. But if you are or have children, Melissa, who are, maybe you want to check this one out. Here's some notable software updates. Under Adobe, I've listed the items that I use from Adobe, and they've all been recently updated. If you use others, I would urge you to check that because they probably have been updated as well. Again, we talked about Affinity Photo in the Ask Me Anything, and they've just been updated to version 2.5. Arc, BB Edit, Bookends, BusyCal, Default Folder, Fantastical, Firefox for all platforms, Chrome for all platforms, Little Snitch, Mac Office, MS Office for Mac, OmniFocus, 1Password, Parallels Desktop, and Pixelmator Pro have all been updated, as well as Quicken, SpamSieve, Ulysses, VCL Media Player, and Zoom. Zoom was just updated a couple days ago. Okay, now we're going to go on to Apple software updates. Basically, all of the iWork apps for all three platforms, tvOS and Vision OS 1.2. I'm not going to go into the betas and coming soon and see it in the fall kind of stuff that was announced at WWDC, because that's going to be Tony's job. Security news. Apple patches a Vision Pro vulnerability, possibly the first ever spatial security hack. Apple WPS surveillance. Canada government wants backdoors into everything. Yeah, like it's really good. That'll be really secure, won't it? Only the government's gonna be able to get in there. The NSA warns that iPhone and Android users should turn their units off and turn it back on again. Again, there should be links to all of these articles in the show notes if you want something more in depth. Code execution flaws in iPhones, iPads, and Mac OS. I think that's going to close out this section of our meeting this evening. And in July, I should say August. In August, we will return you to your regularly scheduled presenter. And now I'm going to stop sharing. And thank you all. And next we have, got to get over to that document. We're going to turn it over to Chris Wesselman for an accessibility minute. Have your Mac read to you. This is something that Roger went through on his fine YouTube live cast a week ago or so about how to get your Mac to read stuff back to you. And with his permission, with Roger's permission, Chris is going to kind of take that tip over and present it to everybody here. Thank you for your attention.
Let me see if I can find my document here I was going to share. Yes. Something. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. I know I've actually got this in my browser here. Well, I'll tell you what. Maybe what we'll do is the meeting feedback form. Let's see, what have I got in DuckDuckGo? I apologize that I'm not sure if I made it to that one of Rogers. I've caught most of them recently. What Bob is referring to is what's called text to speech, or basically getting the Mac to read to you. Wonder if I can find something to read here. Yeah, this ought to be pretty good. And okay, I'm not sure what this window is. It just popped up. You guys seeing this personal settings window here?
Yeah.
I don't know what that was. Okay, but there is a okay, that must be part of something else. All right. So this is a group that Bob knows well. We can select some text, or maybe we can't off a website. All right. Wow, this worked in my demo. Let me try something in Notes, which was a problem I ran into, by the way. My CarPlay went
What
into
browser are
dark.
you using, Chris?
DuckDuckGo. I can't find the window, but so basically, you hit Option Escape. Now, you guys probably can't hear that, right?
No.
Okay.
That's a setting in Zoom. I don't remember exactly where it is. Roger, can you help him, guide him there?
Yeah, before you share a screen, it moved actually. It's now on the right-hand side. And it says, I think something about system audio. So you'd have to quit.
Oh, right. Okay. Let me stop sharing. Let me go ahead and share again. I had a document queued up for this, darn it. And what did I do with that?
Try clicking on the window menu and see if it's in your drop-down list there.
Yeah, the problem is I've got about 800 windows here.
Aha. But just the Zoom window, because
Oh, wait a
sometimes
minute.
it
I think
opens up
this is
multiple
it.
Zoom windows.
Is this it?
That looks promising. There's a website.
Yeah.
It's full screen now.
And so now, in order to, okay, so I need to stop sharing and I need to click the buttons that are on the right side. When I go to share, oh, right, share sound. Great. Okay. Now that window was right here.
Are people actually talking a lot to their devices?
Well, when you talk to the device, that's more of a speech to text or a Siri kind of interaction like dictation. But what we're trying to do tonight is, oh,
You're trying to highlight text and then have it speak to you, right?
yeah, that's it.
Like if you were,
Exactly.
if you had your hands wet and you wanted to have a recipe read to you.
Well, let's try this one,
Or
just
an
see what
article.
this comes out as.
Respectfully submitted in the interest of somehow trying to show Tucson still offers a
guys hear that?
different and albeit competing
Yes.
Yeah,
Arizona
sounds pretty good,
experience
actually.
versus that of
Yes.
Techno-Cactopolis, i.e. Phoenix. And no, it's not more foodie fest.
So what basically I did is said that this is what Bob suggested. It's just the default of you select some text and you go option escape, and then it starts reading. But I made a really interesting discovery along the way here, and I want to express my appreciation to Bob on that. That when, it's one thing when you're doing Siri, and Siri's like announcing an appointment, including reading the zip code of the address in millions, which is sort of amusing. But when you're reading back text to sort of proofread it, I've made an interesting discovery that the Siri voice is really lousy at doing that. Because first of all, it will mess up words. Like techno-cactopolis here, I'm sure. Well, let's see what it does to this. But what I did was I used an enhanced voice.
Techno-Cactopolis.
That's really good, actually.
Oh.
So basically, what happened, and let me stop sharing stuff for a minute so I can talk about this. The regular voices, I mean, there's been a problem from like day one, whenever Apple was doing this with the voices would be way too small. And so if you're trying to use it to proofread or read an email back to you, you want to make sure it's going to catch the wrong word you put in there or didn't put in there so that you hear it. Otherwise, there's no point, right? Because it won't be good for proofreading to read it back to you. But when you go to, let me see if I can bring this up in my control panel. I have that in system settings. You
Can
may
you
want
teach
to
it to learn?
experiment. Sorry?
Like in text, can you teach it to learn? Learn a word?
Today, not so much. Let's see, system settings, spoken content. Here we go. Okay, so let me see if I can move this window too. Oh, good. You guys can still see this, right? So when you go into the voices here, and they have something called enhanced voices. And for instance, I was using the South African voice, Tessa, which I liked a lot for Siri type announcements and short stuff. Unfortunately, when it's actually reading a paragraph of text, it's not very good because the South African accent was different enough that it wasn't really helpful for me for proofreading. So I went back to check the US English ones. And one of the problems, and I hope Apple cleans this up in the future, they've got some old goofy ones here, which are like bubble sounds and a bunch of really kind of useless stuff. Most of these early voices are just junk. and they have Siri voices. But if you look in the enhanced, like, how did I find this one? I think I went into manage voices. Okay, now, do you guys see managed voices? Or do you still see the same window? Do you
We
see
see
we
managed
see it.
voices. You can download them.
Yes, exactly.
And
That's
then
what I wanted
some
to
of them
say.
have enhanced behind them.
Correct. And take a look at the enhanced. I'm not sure what premium means, but if it's bigger, it's probably better. And so for reading, you want the best possible voices you can. Apple's working on getting things better and better. I certainly expect to see some improvements with the quote unquote Apple Intelligence stuff. But it's probably going to be, Tony will maybe tell us better. It's probably going to be the end of the year or 2025 before we see a lot of that stuff. But it just, word to the wise, because if you try to read a paragraph back to yourself with a Siri voice, you're probably not going to, it's not going to be very helpful in terms of catching typos or left out words. But you can look at these various enhanced voices. And yeah, what was the one that I downloaded? But at any rate, they're not that big. I mean, I'll go ahead and do this Ava one while I'm at it. Let's see what she sounds like.
Hello, my name is Ava. I am an American English voice.
That's pretty decent in my book. I don't know what you guys think, and it all depends on your hearing too, right? And despite the fact I've got a lot of hearing loss and higher frequencies, that sounds fine because that's more or less of an alto voice. So, but that is the key for me in this stuff. Now, on the iPhone, you just select some text, and then as part of the copy paste little bar that pops up at the top, there's something that says speak. And you can do that. You can select an entire email and just say speak. And it will come back with that. And you can do a similar thing with your voices on iPhone. And in case anybody's wondering, I do expect this to be a moving target. Apple's promised a huge amount of stuff in accessibilities. In fact, they're apparently going pretty well crazy. The Apple Vision Pro, by the way, is doing very well in the disabilities market for people who can afford them. But there's some amazing stories out on the web about people that have never been able to do X and Y, and now they're doing it. So, but I do expect more in this space and for it to get better. But, just remember the two different things. One is speech recognition, which is like dictation. And the other is, text to speech, where it's actually reading to you. And for some of us may remember the original Knowledge Navigator from 1987. I went back and found that on the web. And I sent it to several friends who also were watching all the videos from WWDC. And everybody kind of came to the same agreement. We're getting close. We're getting close to what the Knowledge Navigator was, which is really exciting stuff. So, but again, it'll roll out. It's going to roll out really slowly. And Apple's, as Tony will probably tell us, they're not tooting their horn very much about it. And people that say Apple's late to the game in AI don't understand what Apple's doing. Because Apple's been working on it for 5 years plus, maybe 10. So, I mean, I think that's all I've got. Are there any questions? Because I could talk more about this if you guys have any questions about it.
I miss the old moose voice.
It may be around somewhere. I'm sure we can find it for you again.
Blast from the past. One thing that I was going to say, I use PopClip. I don't know if you're familiar with it. You highlight text and there's an extension in there that lets you speak text. So as soon as you highlight it, you click the icon and it speaks the text for you.
There are settings in accessibility where we can do a very similar thing. The thing to remember about some of these is the accessibilities can sometimes go too far, and then you've got your machine doing things you don't want. And so it's always good, when you're getting into the more advanced parts of this stuff, to check with people that, you know, work on this stuff for a living, like Melissa and Roger and people. That's one of my announcements coming through. I don't know if you guys heard that. No. No, I have it go to my hearing aids now, which is somewhat helpful, but I wish I could be more selective. But anyway, that is the reading thing. And just remember, Option Escape, select your text, Option Escape, and you'll probably find you don't like the voice, and then you can go through system preferences. And when you're managing and looking for voices on Manage Voices, look for premium, or, you know, the bigger the better when it comes to a voice. And most of them are under 300 megs, I think. So they're not huge.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks,
Any other
Chris.
questions?
Now this is a feature that I like to use to help me proofread things that I write. I found that if I that I can easily make an error. Yes, Susan Clement, I know I do that a lot. But if I have the Mac read it back to me, then I'm more likely to catch that error than if I just read it. Because as I'm reading along, I'll just correct it in my head, which is a pretty scary place, without any possible problem. So I don't get the errors, or it doesn't come through to me. But if I have the machine read the text back to me, then I can hear a lot of the errors. And so I can do that. And I knew the Option Escape to start and stop speaking selected text some time ago, but I lost it. And I was always using right click, get a contextual menu, and it says speak text, and you can start and stop that way. But the Option Escape is so much faster and easier that it is a real boon to me. So I'm glad that
The
we were able
controller's
to
nice
show this
too,
to
Bob.
everybody.
The controller is nice because you can control the speed.
Yeah, you can also see that little controller that will slow it down or speed it up.
That's great for grammatical errors, but what about typos?
Well,
I mean,
typos, they're going to pronounce incorrectly, other than which is which, and things like that. So, you know, it's better than nothing.
well, the new writing
So-
tools in Apple Intelligence are going to be really awesome. I'm really looking forward to those.
Kind of like Grammarly, you think, Chris?
You know, I'm not sure. I've never been a Grammarly user.
Me
I'm
neither.
not quite sure how they're going to do it. I think Apple, you know, they're probably very cognizant of the fact that everybody's talking about how they're Sherlocking Grammarly, and it remains to be seen, you know, but it may just have some, you know, things like summarization of text has been around since OpenDoc. Okay, we had that in the late 90s, and it's been in system services all these years. You can do that right now, and it's kind of fun. But I think the proofreading part will be really interesting. And, you know, particularly in enterprise environments, I don't know how Tony's shop works, but there were parts of Stanford where users could not install any software in their machines. And so, you know, if IT didn't like Grammarly, you didn't get it. But, you know, using something that's in the operating system, it's already there. So I think that'll be very popular.
Chris, Diana Mueller put a question in the chat. Is there an extensive support document for accessibility?
Oh God, there's probably a shelf of books, actually. The best thing that I would do would be to either send a text request or a chat request to support.apple.com. And this is the new shortcut that Kevin and I figured out. If you go to the support.apple.com page, you can start a chat and you can say in a chat, I need help with accessibility. And they'll probably say which area. And you can share as much as you feel comfortable sharing, whatever, and then arrange for a call back. And then probably the next morning or maybe sooner, somebody will call you back.
When we did it last time, it like took 2 minutes. They
Oh,
said, would you
really?
like me
Yeah.
to call me now? And I said, yes.
Okay.
So I just posted a link in the chat. There is a separate accessibility. So if you go to support.apple.com/accessibility, and then there's a link that says contact Apple for accessibility support.
Oh,
But they
very
also
cool.
have a lot of the features and accessibility support right on that page. So it's kind of a reference point to start from.
Thanks, Kevin. I did not know about this. This looks tremendous.
That was Tony. They sent that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tony. But yeah, that looks really cool.
And Melissa just put in the chat. Melissa, why don't you just say that? But you need to unmute.
Because I might have had my mouth full of food. At least it's broken down into segments there if you go to the link that I put in the chat. So you can go to speech, hearing, whichever category you want to hone in on. But I would encourage you to look over that first, and then you'll learn the vernacular, and then you'll know how to put the words together to ask the questions for help when you go to support. Whatever you do, though, take a screenshot of how you have things set now before you make any changes so that you can get it back in case you really screw something up.
That's a wonderful
Really good
idea.
tip. Really good tip.
Good tip.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I've myself done accessibility stuff that left my machine sort of partially non-functional, and it took me about 3 days to figure out what I did. And so, it can happen to anybody. Yeah. It's a very good idea to leave breadcrumbs behind. But yeah, Apple's really big on this stuff, and there's a huge following. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Appreciate the insight and information. And now we're going to turn it over to Tony, who's going to condense the 1 3/4 hour WWDC keynote speech, opening keynote speech to 20 or 30 minutes, probably.
Yeah.
Take it away, Tony.
Okay, so this was the WWDC. Remember, for developers, although this one I'll say they were very light on developer content and they only mentioned this was really an intended for public presentation. None of these things are really available today. They'll be coming this fall, and I'll walk through. So, kind of everything you expect. The iOS N+1, iPad OS N+1, a new version of Mac OS. The new theme is Sequoia. New Watch OS, new Vision OS, and then they spent a large amount of time on Apple Intelligence. And so I'll cover that towards the end, but this was just kind of a overview of here's everything that they talked about. They spent a couple minutes on this, talking about Apple TV Plus. It's been 5 years. Seems like it hasn't been that long. They've had the highest rated original programs for the past 3 years, winning British BAFTA awards, Emmys, Golden Globes, lots of awards. They had way too many things. In 5 minutes, they probably said the name of 10 or 15 new series and 10 or 15 new films that are coming. And then they announced 4 or 5 new seasons for shows that already had the first season. One of the ones I'm looking forward to is Severance. And I put a link in here, and I have posted these show notes in the Groups IO, but I did it during the Ask the Expert section. So you probably haven't seen an email yet, but these are available already. So if you go to that apple.com/TVPR, it kind of walks through, here's the new stuff, here's what's coming up, here's all the things. That's a good link to have if you're looking for what's new. Okay, so that was only a couple minutes. One of the things I did was I said, okay, how long are they spending on something? So Vision OS 2, they spent 9 minutes on this. They talked about that there's already 2,000 apps available for the Apple Vision Pro. They have now added the capability to create spatial photos from your existing photo library. So it'll try to do recognition of depth and convert it into a spatial photo that you can move around and look at different angles from an existing photo. They added a new share play, so you can share what you're looking at in your photos with a group of people or another person. Um, it really feels like the Vision OS 1 was early developers. It's all developers. So they've come up with a whole bunch of new simplified hand gestures, and it looks like they're refining how this works. I'm kind of waiting until they come out with this version 2 and probably the next device before I jump in and start trying this, because I don't want to learn all the original gestures and then have to relearn the new ones after they've refined everything. Um, they now, with the desktop integration, so you can use dual 4K displays within the Vision Pro. So within your Vision for your Mac, it's as if you have two 4K displays. And they have new immersive videos, 8K videos that are 180 degrees. So you can look around, it covers your peripheral vision, but it's essentially the front half of you is covered with this immersive video. And this shows a little bit more about how serious they are. They announced 8 additional countries coming over the next couple months. So developers in lots of more countries will have access. I believe it was UK, Ireland. I believe China was on the list. I didn't write down the full list, but they are expanding it to extended countries. And so that was 9 minutes that they did. So lots of things in there. But a lot of this feels like stuff that is a refinement of the existing Vision OS and understanding how even developers are using this system, right? This is the first time they've really seen it of people other than Apple employees. So they're starting to really refine this. Okay, the next thing. And one thing I will say is a lot of these things build on each other. So, um, the photos thing, it was announced with the Vision OS, but I'm pretty sure they showed that on the Mac you can also do that. So converting photos to spatial photos would be something that could be done either on a Vision Pro or on a Mac, possibly an iPad. I didn't see it specifically, but a lot of these features, when they add a feature, they then add it to the OS base and it comes along with everything. So 16 minutes on iOS. The big thing here that they talked about the most was home screen personalization. So instead of having your grids always start at the top left and go across and then down rows, you can pick any of those grid spots and place an icon there. You can see on the right, it's an example of a row of icons above the picture, a row of icons kind of below the main face of the picture. And you can do that on any screen. So it makes it a little easier. I know multiple people have done this where they have an almost blank screen so they can see the photo that's really what they want to see on their phone. They've added dark mode icons. So, right, your phone changes to dark mode, so now the icons will also change. It wasn't clear if that was automatic or if it was handled by Apple having created dark mode icons. But this next feature tells me that it's likely that it's going to be handled automatically. You'll be able to select a tint color. Like in this case, he showed with the yellow tennis balls at the bottom and having all the icons kind of be monochrome yellow tint. Personally, I think that might make it hard to find some of your apps if you're really used to the color icons. But it does make your phone look nicer, matching the background of your image. So a lot more customization also in Control Center. They're going to have multiple sheets, including home and playback controls. Applications will now be able to create Control Center controls. That hasn't been trivial for application developers, and they added new capabilities to do that. And you can change now. The lock screen has the it just has two icons, right? It has the camera and the flashlight. You'll be able to select which control center items you want to be on the lock screen. So for me, I find I'm using my magnifier a lot more now. So having the magnifier easily available on the lock screen would be really nice. It's more useful to me than the camera. Um, Camera I usually have pretty quick anyway. Okay. They talk a little bit more about privacy. You'll be able to lock an app so that you'll have to use Face ID or biometric to open an app. So if you have something that has private data, even when you hand someone else the phone, they won't be able to say get into your email because your email app will be locked and you would have to do your Face ID to allow them to use that app. You can also hide an app, and it puts it in a special hidden apps area so it doesn't show up on your phone. So if you don't want someone to know you're doing something, you can then hide the app. Or if you're trying to surprise someone, you can hide apps or hide things from people who just random. If you're showing someone a photo or something and they change what they're doing, it won't show up on your phone. They announced a lot of new features in messages. So right now they have like 4 or 5 items when you do a tap back. So responding to a message quickly, they have like a thumbs up and a couple other items. You'll be able to use any emoji in tap back to respond to people. They have added a feature for send later, so you can create a text message and then say, send this tomorrow at 10 a.m. Or like I might do this for work. If I'm doing something after hours, I might say, oh, wait, work doesn't start until 8:30 tomorrow, so don't send this until 8 o'clock, 8:30 or 9 o'clock tomorrow. I don't want people to think that I sent them something at 6 p.m. after I got off, that I want them to respond before tomorrow morning. So it would just show up in there as a sent message at 9 o'clock in the morning. So you can now do formatting. So on the upper right here, you can see there's bolded text, there's italics text, underlined, crossed out. And so that's the text formatting. They have a bunch of new text effects. So this one in the lower right here, it says blown away, and it's kind of exploding out of the text. If you have a phone that is capable of doing the satellite messaging, either emergency or roadside assistance, you will now be able to send messages via satellite. And so that's, I think, iPhone 14 and later, so it's pretty new devices that can do that, but you would be able to send via satellite now. They also said they'll do the rich communication service messaging. That was like a throwaway line. Google's been trying to get them to do that for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years probably. They're probably only going to implement the standard pieces. Google has a bunch of custom Google extensions that aren't public standards, so Apple will probably not implement all of those. But you will be able to do the RCS messaging now with non-iPhone devices easily. Okay. They kind of previewed some of the Apple Intelligence things in Mail. They talked about being able to do on-device categorization. If you've used Gmail, your inbox is kind of split up into primary items, which are emails that are actually to you, not from companies, but from other people in general. There's transactions, every time you make a purchase or an Amazon order, it shows up and sends you a receipt or something like that. That'll show up in transactions. Updates are mailing lists, and then promotions are advertisements from companies in general. So it's going to do on device. It's going to categorize that so you can view your mailbox by those categories. Gmail has had this for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years. It feels very similar, but the big difference here is, again, Apple talking with privacy. This is all done on the device. It isn't because Apple is looking at your email and deciding which of these are, which is how Google does it. Apple is doing this on the device. It's picking which ones are which. It will synchronize between your devices, but Apple is making the choice on device. You'll be able to now use, they announced topographic maps in the last watchOS. So there'll be now the iPhone will be able to take topographic maps. Wallet, they have now person to person tap to pay. You'll be able to use tap to send cash using the wallet app now. And that picture on the right is kind of showing sending $20 to someone. You can just immediately do it. It can come from the Apple Cash or it can come from a bank account, but you can automatically say, okay, send this, and then you just tap to send. So it's not through an iMessage or anything like that. If you have event tickets, it will also allow you to get updates on the event tickets. It will show you things like when the venue opens, seating, where your seat is in the venue, other information about the venue. So those will show up in the wallet app with the event tickets. In the journal app, they're adding a mood tracking and they're adding a search function. So it'll search your journal entries and you can do mood tracking, like how did you feel today or what was your mood? And it'll keep track of that for you. They're adding game mode to iOS. They have that on the Mac and iPad, and now it's being added to the phone. In photos, they're automatically creating more on collections, and they're redid the Photos app to base things on when, who, and where you were. So time, people, and trips are kind of the categories, and it kind of puts together your pictures and puts them in groups based on when and where and who is involved, and you can search by those features. Okay, so that was the iOS. They added just a few things. They said audio and home, and this included both the AirPods and the tvOS. So in the AirPods, you can now, it'll detect a head nod. So if you get a phone call and you don't want to answer it, you can just not, it'll say, do you want to answer this call? If you nod your head no, it'll just send them to voicemail automatically. If you nod your head yes, then it'll auto answer. And like if your hands are busy and you can't tap to do that, so you can get a yes or no into Siri by nodding with the AirPods. It also said it's going to do more voice isolation, so very noisy backgrounds. They'll be able to do more isolation of your voice versus background noise. tvOS, they're adding something called Insight. I think they have a little bit of this, but they're improving it. So it will show the actor and character names. I think it was if you swipe up on your remote, it'll show who are the current actors on the screen and the character name. And it will, if there's a song playing in the background, it will show you the song. They said this was for Apple original content, so this is something Apple is doing on all the stuff that they produce. It wasn't clear if this works with other content or if it's only Apple originals. Another thing they're doing is enhanced dialogue. And if you say, hey Siri, or if you say, hey, what did I just hear? And it does a rewind, it will automatically turn on closed captioning. So you'll get a rewind of 5 to 10 seconds, and then it'll show the closed caption and the audio, you'll hear it again. So it will also automatically turn closed captioned on if you mute the screen. Then it will start showing the closed captions because obviously you're still watching it. You didn't pause it. You hit mute, so maybe something else is happening, but you'd still then be able to see what the dialogue is that's occurring on screen.
Tony, I have a quick question for you.
Mhm.
Is the closed caption AI enhanced or is it just text file enhanced?
Well, so the enhanced dialogue piece sounded like it was more audio processing to isolate voices from the background and then clarify the voices. The closed captioning is based still on the closed captioning system, which is time code and file based.
Okay.
The important thing they were talking about here was if you before you could say, hey, I didn't hear that, it would rewind and then play it again. They're like, well, if someone says that, if I rewind and play it again, I should probably turn on the closed caption so they get both the repeat of the audio, but then they can see what the text is as well. And this was only 5 minutes, so I think I have almost spent more time on it than they did. Okay, they jumped into watchOS 11, 7 minutes. They talked a lot about doing training mode and training tracking, keeping track of what you have done over the previous week. How much effort was this exercise for you? They are going to allow you to also customize your goal rings by day or pause for a day. Hey, I got a really bad cold. I'm not going to do a 10-mile run today. Not that I ever do a 10-mile run. But you can say, hey, pause my rings, and then it will not count that against your streak. So your streaks will still remain even though you skipped one day because you were sick. Or say you injure yourself and you need to take a day or two off. So you can pause the rings. And for customizing goal rings by day, right? If you know, like, if every Saturday you do extra things, or you go on a hike every Saturday, you can say, oh, well, I expect to have twice as much in my move goal on Saturday, so I can set that up. Or, hey, I'm working, I have a lot of work, so I'm not able to get out with my watch and do things. I can reduce it during the week and then have it increased on Saturday and Sunday. So they're allowing a lot more customization that way for your goal rings. They introduced a new app called Vitals. And so this is going to track your health metrics. Again, this is coordinated with the iOS and the health app. So it's looking at all of the things, your heart rate, your oxygen, your temperature, your sleep time, and it's going to try to identify your patterns and then notify you if something is out of normal. Hey, your heart rate is really high today, or you did some exercise and your heart rate is higher than I would expect and you didn't recover. Um, so it's going to show you that and allow you to track that more easily on the watch. And they showed similar screens for iOS. On iOS earlier, they introduced live activities like sports scores, or things that are happening live. Those can now show up on the smart stack on the watch. And they also earlier they introduced the check-in function on iOS. So they have now added that to the watch. So you can do a check-in, say, you're going home, hey, I want to check in, or I'm going to do a 10-mile run. You can say, hey, I want to check in after the run. You can then, at the end of your run, just straight on your watch, say, hey, I made it back home, I checked in, and then the person will be notified that you made it home. So if someone is going out running in the evening or in a new area, then they have a way to do a check-in, similar to what you had on iOS earlier. Okay. 7 minutes, iPad OS 18. They've added now, instead of always having the sidebar on the screen, they have a way to do kind of a floating tab bar, which everyone who's using Zoom, if you've done screen sharing, it kind of does this for you in Zoom. It's the same idea. It has all the controls in a little tab, but when you click on that tab, it can expand out to a sidebar for more information or more details. You can now also remotely control an iPad or iPhone from your computer. So they showed this during the iPad OS, but that's something that works on the iPhone as well. I thought that was interesting. Your screen on your iPhone or iPad stays locked, but you get to interact with it on your screen just as if you were using the device. So they were joking about how long this took, but they now have a calculator on iPad. It's going to keep track of history of calculations and unit. It'll now do unit conversions. And they showed this a lot. This is the math notes. It's going to use Apple Pencil. And on the right-hand side here, they had some examples of if you just if you write in an equation and then write an equal sign, it will do the calculation for you. This was in the middle. So it filled in that 96 times 28 at the lower right there. It put the answer in. Other things that you can do is you can put variables in here. They showed examples with variables and showing plots and how variables interact. I think this would have been excellent for learning a lot of math things when I was in middle school and high school. So I think it'll be very useful for that. For me today, I'm going to have to see how advanced the math is that it has access to. But I think it's an interesting use, and it's kind of showing how it's doing kind of smart on-device processing, being able to figure out what you're doing and give you answers. Smart Script is now, it refines your handwriting. So it essentially uses your handwriting as a sample, and then it allows you to add text in your handwriting. So instead of having it in a type font, it will show up in your handwriting style. And if you write really fast, it'll kind of correct it so it looks like you were being very, very careful when you were writing. I don't know how well that'll work, but it looked very interesting to be able to show things in your handwriting. And they added a feature where you can just, oh, I want to erase this paragraph just like you do. If you're using a pen and saying, I don't want that, you kind of scratch it out and then it will erase that text. Okay, so that was iPad OS. So now on Mac OS Sequoia. So they did only 14 minutes for Mac OS. So they essentially said, hey, all that stuff you saw on iOS and iPad OS, yeah, it works on Mac OS as well. Any of the features that make sense to have on a Mac device work. So continuity. So you can do iPhone mirroring and notifications. So you can get your iPhone notifications on your Mac, and the screen stays locked. So you can see there's an example of showing screen mirroring and using the iPhone on the device. They showed an update on window arrangement. So there are apps that do this on the Mac. There's probably 4 or 5 of them, but you can now drag a window to the edge to tile it. So if you drag it to the right edge of the screen, it'll take up like the right half. If you kind of drag it towards a corner, it'll take up a quarter of the screen. Windows has done this for years. Apple just added this. So this is another item. They're Sherlocking. I almost expected at some point to have a counter to see how many things did Apple announce that are Sherlocking something in this keynote. I think there were probably 6 or 7 things that were Sherlocked. So the next thing they showed is a presenter preview. So in Zoom and FaceTime, and this is a system capability, so other applications will be able to take advantage of it. When you click that share button, it'll show you a preview of this is what it's going to look like for the people on the other end. So you can go, oh, wait, I didn't really want to share my whole screen. I just wanted one window. Oh, next Sherlock. They're announcing a passwords app. So an independent app, and it will do Wi-Fi app passwords, websites, verification codes, shared passwords, sign in with Apple, and passkeys. It is going to sync across devices, and they said it will include Windows. Oh, thanks, Kevin. Not everyone may know. Yeah, so Sherlock was announced. So Apple announced something called Watson, and there was an application called Sherlock. Watson did essentially everything that Sherlock did, and it rendered that tool irrelevant. In this case, for some of these things, Apple bought the companies that did them already, and some of them they clearly haven't. So this passwords app, I think is going to cut into the market share for both 1Password and Bitwarden. We'll see how it goes. I use devices that Apple does not yet support, so it's likely that I'm going to stick with 1Password at least for a while. Safari, they showed highlights, being able to highlight different pieces of the website, being able to create a table of contents and a summary for a web page, and they improved the video viewer, so it will go to a full window video and bring the controls over and show a lot of the controls and make it easier to view video from within websites. So instead of getting a tiny little image in the web, it will make it a separate window so that you can then resize it and see it at a larger size. They announced a new game porting toolkit. They did this last year. This is version 2, and this one essentially has improved compatibility. This is really a developer item, but it also, they were talking to a lot of the gamers saying, hey, we're improving this, we're making it better. We'll see how that goes when it comes out. Okay, so that was about the first 2/3 of the presentation. Then they spent 40 minutes on Apple Intelligence. So I think we've done some demonstrations of OpenGPT. So this is talking about generative models like OpenGPT from OpenAI. It has a lot of capabilities. But Apple's item here is they're able to do this on device most of the time. And I'll talk a little bit later about how they're going to do it when it's not able to be done on device. So they added a bunch of what they called capabilities. So writing tools, being able to proofread, being able to summarize, being able to rewrite. The example on rewriting, they showed, oh, make this a more professional tone. So it changed what was written to be more professional. It allowed you to switch back and forth and read both the original and the rewrite version. And you could then edit the rewrite version if you still wanted to. But you could have multiple different types of styles that you were choosing from. So for images, creating images, they talked about being able to do sketches, illustrations, and animations. And I have an example of those pictures. And then actions. So lots of applications will be able to define what actions they want the Apple Intelligence to do. And then personal context. So this is now, it's using your data on the phone across apps. So I have a typo there. It is across the applications that you have for your context. So it's searching your emails, but it's doing it all on device. Okay. So actions, here's some examples. So based on context, one of those ones there, play the song that Ray texted me. So it's able to look in Apple Music and in messages to say, hey, look for a text message from Ray, look for a song name, and then go to Apple Music and play that song. They also talked about this in terms of Siri being able to maintain context. So it's not independent requests to Siri. And the example they gave was, hey, what's the weather tomorrow in Muir Woods? Oh, the weather is XYZ. Okay, set up an appointment there for 9 o'clock tomorrow. And it didn't say, where do you mean? It said, oh, you just asked me about Muir Woods. Clearly you want it to be Muir Woods that you want this appointment at 9 o'clock. And it's using all the device information, all of your personal information on device to help with, okay, well, like how long is it going to take me to get somewhere? Or am I going to make it on time? This was leaving a meeting at Apple headquarters to get to a daughter's play. Okay, it knows where the playhouse is. It knows what time the play is supposed to start. Here are the different routes you could take. Hey, you're going to need 20 minutes to get there. So it was helping with doing all of that and searching without you having to say, oh, what do you want to do? It was, hey, can I make it on time to the play? Or when do I need to leave to get to the play today, my daughter's play? And then it used all the information to derive that and come up with okay, it'll take you about 20 minutes to get there, so you can't make the meeting at 4 o'clock. In the bottom here, these are just kind of examples of what a sketch looks like, what they did for illustration, and then an animation style. I think I have more on the animation a little bit later. So for this, Apple Intelligence, Apple isn't storing our data. It's only used for our requests and verifiable. So this was for the private cloud compute. Most of the Apple Intelligence is going to be done on device. The only thing they committed to for on device was A17 Pro, so iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max, and anything with an M1 to M4 chip. So, I think they just said M series, and I shorthanded that to the current M1 to M4. But if your iPad or device does not have an M series chip, so even the new iPad base level doesn't have an M series chip, it would not be able to do all of the on-device processing for Apple Intelligence. Only the M2 or M4 based devices like the iPad Air and the new iPad Pros. I think the previous generation iPad Pros also had M1s or M2s. So they're doing what they call semantic indexing, so indexing based on the meaning of the data and how it's related. And so then private cloud compute is based on Apple Silicon. They didn't specifically say what the devices were, but your device says, hey, I need to send something to the private cloud compute. This is too big of a request for me to handle. And it figures out how to get it there. And what they've committed to is the software that runs on the private cloud compute will be publicly signed and reviewed by security experts. And so your device will be able to say which version of private cloud compute is being used and be able to verify that the device has met the requirements that Apple put forth in terms of how they said they were going to protect your data and that it's not stored and it's only used for your requests. So they're doing something way beyond what has been done before for other AI systems. And I think you've heard about this. They're using your data and your requests to improve their AI. In this case, Apple is saying that's not what we're going to do. So Apple Experiences, this was about 30 minutes of it. So they talked about Siri. It's more integrated. Instead of showing that circle with Siri in it, it's going to glow on the edge of the screen. So it's kind of saying the whole device is Siri. It lets you maintain the context request to request. I kind of talked about that a little earlier. If you don't want to talk and you want to type, you can actually type into Siri now, so you can type a question in. That's really useful when you think about this being done on the Mac, so you can type a question in without having to figure out if you have a microphone available or not, or if you have the microphone on. So they've said they've included a lot of details on how Apple features and settings work. So you can describe a feature to have Siri show you that feature. So it's kind of using a description of the technique. Hey, I want to be able to make the text on my screen bigger. And then it would say, oh, well, here's the magnification option, or here is the accessibility option to make text larger. So you don't have to know the specific name of the feature or setting. Siri will help you figure it out. We'll see how well that works. It has awareness of what is on the screen, and it allows it to do in-app actions, and you can applications can define new actions for Siri to be able to take. They created a kit for being able to define those applications. Writing tools. So this is an example. I talked about this a little earlier. So rewrite. So friendly, professional, concise. Oh, I wrote 4 paragraphs. There is no way they're going to read that. Okay, make a concise version of this, and then you can read it and see if you like it. You can create a summary, key points, put in a table, create a list, and you can do that with rewrite as well, and proofread. So this is showing, hey, do proofread, do rewrite. You can say how you want it to change. Hey, can you make this more professional? Can you make this hey, this is sent to my professor. I want to send it to my friend. Can you change this so I'm writing it to a friend instead of to a professor? So it allows you to also insert that summary. Hey, here's a summary of this email. Um, I would, and then you can include the full context below, but then the summary gets the people, hey, here's the real meat of this. Here's what it's going to talk about. And then let's see, priority notifications was identifying items that require handling immediately. So things like, hey, I'm unable to get out of work, so I need someone to pick up our daughter from daycare. And it would allow that to break through some of your settings. It highlights it as a priority item. Genmoji. I'm not so sure about this, but creating a custom emoji from a description. So the example here is a smiley relaxing wearing cucumbers. So there's the smiley with cucumbers, and you can see it gives you some different options. A lox bagel, so it's showing the right. So these aren't real emojis. It's kind of combining things together from different emojis and pictures and context to create something. You can also say, create an emoji of a picture of someone that you have on your device. Hey, I would like an emoji or a sketch of this person. So image playground is word cloud based. So you can then say, you can give it a style or you can add additional words and it will then modify the picture. So this is an example of a word cloud that came from a notes. So it's saying this type of architecture, this was a sketch that was in there. I want columns and a dome, and so it came up with this image based on this sketch and these word cloud words. It created this image. You can use image wand to transform a sketch to a finished image. So this was kind of showing this sketch of this pavilion to create the final sketch. You can also clean up the background and pictures. So you can use this thing called the image wand to circle something in the background and have it get rid of it automatically. And you can search using natural language through your pictures. They had some really good example of, hey, show me all the pictures of Lainey with stickers on her face. And then it went through the photo album and found like 10 pictures that had, someone with that was apparently that named person with stickers on their face. It can also create a movie based on a sentence, text prompt. So create a movie about walking through downtown Tucson. And then it would start pulling stuff together and create a movie based on that. So all of that and all of those features were done using only the Apple Intelligence. It may be using the Apple Private Cloud Compute, but they said, right, there are certain things that your context may or may not be able to cover. So they have a way to say, hey, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. Do you want to use GPT to do that? And it's using a new version of ChatGPT that's built in. And so this is where it specifically asks you, do you want me to use ChatGPT? So it's very clear that it's sharing with ChatGPT. And if you have a ChatGPT account, you will be able to connect to that. So if you have a professional subscription to ChatGPT, you can use the advanced features using your devices. The new developer tools allow integration to the on-device intelligence. I talked a little bit about being able to create actions in your app and being able to ask for requests or things to be done by your device. And again, supported on A17 Pro or M series devices, so really recent devices. So this is a set of links, which is obviously only useful if you can click on them, but it's showing the different things, the previews for the different items that were here. And that's the event link from Apple for if you want to watch the approximately hour and 40 minutes of Apple Talk. And then some people talked about these a little bit earlier. I put some interesting articles. Mac Rumors did a roundup of here's what was announced. And Tidbits has done 2 articles, one on Apple Intelligence and one on compelling features, 14 new compelling features. And so that is my presentation. It felt very much to me that Apple used the summary feature. They talked really fast. They had a lot of single throwaway lines. Things that were really only one sentence in the whole presentation of almost 2 hours. So it felt like they really rushed all of the intros to the new OSs so that they could talk a lot about Apple Intelligence.
Thank you, Tony. I'm sure that we're going to be delving into all these features and all these OSs in much greater detail starting in the fall. But we have a little bit of time. Are there 1 or 2 questions that from the floor for Tony?
Where
Well,
do you start?
go ahead, Jerry.
I said, where do you start?
Well, that's the problem, and that's kind of why, I feel that there's going to be a lot more of this kind of stuff that we need to talk about in the future.
Yeah.
So I think one thing is developer previews are available now. Public betas will be available in July. Not all of the features are going to be available during the betas. I would expect these are going to come out in the September, October timeframe with new iPhones. But they just said this fall.
Yeah.
Tony, I think there's a key there because some of these features that are very demoable features are going to require the new iPhones.
Yeah, that was, I think, A17 Pro, right? It's going to be on, it really only is supported on the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. Those are the only 2 devices that have an A17 Pro. Right. And then the iPad Pros, recent ones have either, I think they had M1s or M4s. And then the new iPad Air had the M2 processor. But even like an iPad mini, I don't think is going to support some of these, and the iPad, the base iPad doesn't. And I think one of the things they're doing there, a couple things people that I have heard people say, they think using the AI and these language models requires lots of RAM, and so they're saying it's all the devices that have at least 8 GB of RAM. Right, and
Wow.
even the A16 processor is only 6 GB.
Oh. And I think they're big performance issues so that iOS 18 will scale backwards all the way back to iPhone SE, but it may not do a whole lot on an iPhone SE.
And
Yeah.
maybe super slow.
Well, yeah, they try to balance that, right? And it's always, there are always people that complain and then they want to sort of try to force it on there. Then they find out it takes weeks for the thing to work.
And I think Apple being Apple was being conservative and saying, we know these devices will support it. And depending on private cloud compute and how much they can ramp that up and how much can be supported with smaller models, they may roll it out to to more of the A series processors, but right, they're trying to promise what they can deliver instead of over promising.
There were several after the fact interviews with Tim Cook, and there is, if you look in Mac Rumors, there's a series of 3, Justine and that fellow Marquez and another fellow I didn't know, Middle Eastern sounding name. And I thought those were pretty good interviews. John Gruber was back from Daring Fireball, but I have to say I didn't take away a lot from that. Maybe I watched it too late at night, but I wasn't, watch it if you want, but I mean, the ones that are short and kind of interesting and some of Tim's ideas, like he expects to see lots of chat GPT like things in the future that are highly specialized, maybe like healthcare, legal, engineering, that kind of thing. And that people will be using all of these either for free or through subscriptions. And so Apple's trying to provide an interface that will, anonymize the IP address and various and sundry things so that the service doesn't know who you are. And so they're not able to keep any kind of log on you, because every time you use it, you're going to be a new person. So it's pretty impressive, I thought, how they're doing the security around that. And unfortunately, Mr. Musk didn't understand the technology, or he might not have said what he did, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, I think a lot of people also said, oh, well, Apple's using OpenAI for all of this stuff, Chat GPT, and which means they didn't actually listen to what was said during the presentation.
Right.
That it was not. And Melissa, you had a comment or a question? Hands up.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I'm wondering, are you running the developer beta? Have you looked at the mail? I'm looking forward to a lot of this stuff, but one of the things I'm really concerned about is going to be the mail filtering with the primary and the promotions and where they kind of
you
copy
can
that.
turn that off.
Oh, good.
So you just go back to your normal inbox.
Okay, good. Because I can already see that's going to cause problems like it has already for Gmail for several users. I'm going to want to turn that off for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did put a couple of links and comments in the chat. There, you wish that you had a list of things that were Sherlocked, and so 9 to 5 Mac does have that list. And one of the things that they had on there, of course, was that it could Sherlock 1Password, but I disagree because the passwords is more of a feature. It's not really a fully fledged app, or is it going to be?
No, it'll be a fully fledged app.
It's going to be a fully fledged app. Okay, so it's not buried in settings anymore.
Nope.
But it looks a lot like what was already in system settings. They're just pushing it out as an app.
Just bringing it out.
And
yeah,
I haven't. Yeah.
The question will be whether it'll. The big question will be: will it have extensions, or will it be system-wide so you could use it in Firefox and Chrome and other browsers? If you can't, then 1Password or Bitwarden is the way to go.
Right. Yeah. And plus, like I've said before, 1Password and other password managers, they're now more becoming fully fledged credential managers. They're not just password managers. And it seems to me like if Apple's breaking out what used to be a system setting into an app, I think it's just going to be a password manager, a very limited password manager that's probably not going to be very good for cross-platform use, and it's not going to manage credentials like a fully fledged credential manager does, like 1Password.
So the things they were showing, it's going to handle. It's going to be the 60 or 70% solution that 95% of the people need.
Yes.
So I think it's going to stick with. There's certain things that 1Password will do and that Bitwarden will do that Apple is not going to do. One of them being Linux clients. Another being supporting all the web browsers instead of just Safari.
Just Safari.
Right. Plus, how much of it? I mean, I've been staying away from advising people to use the built-in password feature only because if you don't have good situational awareness and you don't have a good PIN or security and you're not using the additional security features, then isn't it still going to be a single point of failure or weakness within just the PIN, the passcode? If you're still using a 4-digit passcode and someone shoulder surfs and gets your code, then they get everything versus having things locked behind almost like a firewall, if you will, in a password
So,
manager that's dedicated.
yeah, so I think the new passwords app will probably automatically be locked, so you have to use
Biometrics.
biometrics to unlock the app. That'll be one of their defaults, similar to what is done. I'm interested to see some of their implementation because Apple has not done a good job of separating your
Right.
password keychain password from your login password. And they
Exactly.
really, right, that's one of the main things 1Password does, right? It lets you create one really big, long, strong password or phrase that then unlocks your other passwords, as
Right. So
opposed
even if
to,
somebody did shoulder surf and see you unlock your phone, or if biometrics failed, because it can fail and it does fail if you don't have Touch ID, and or if you do have Touch ID but your fingers are wet because you were holding onto a glass or something, or you look at it wrong, you're still going to have to enter that code in. So there's still the possibility of somebody
yep.
getting into your stuff and getting to the keys to your city. So that's a concern. I'm still not on board with putting all of your stuff into Apple's password manager.
Yeah, I give a whole probably full hour on. You probably also shouldn't have your one-time codes and your passwords in the same manager either.
Mm-hmm.
They should be in separate devices, but
That's
separate
a
ones.
pain.
But yeah, it becomes a
I do
question
use
of
1Password for that.
what level of security versus what level of inconvenience or pain are you willing to
You're right,
tolerate?
the balance.
Any
Okay,
other
Thank you,
everybody.
Tony.
questions?
I think that we're going to pick the door prize winner and say good evening. And I want to thank Tony for a great job trying to summarize all that stuff into such a small space and time. But we're going to have to talk about a lot of that a lot more.
Yep.
So the part that you've all been waiting for is, let's see, pick a number between 1 and 23. A random number between 1 and 23. Okay, unfortunately, that's an elected officer, so we can't use that one. Random number between 1 and 23. $15. Well, how about that? 15 is Tony Ewing.
Yay.
So
Yay, Tony.
we don't pay for these demonstrations, but this time he's getting a little bit back for all of his work. So Tony, I will send that gift card out to you tomorrow. And if I don't, you are most welcome to give me a email dope slap and remind me that I need to do that. So good evening, everybody. Have a
Hey,
good
Bob.
4th of July.
Bob,
Yes,
before we
yes.
sign off, I just wanted to double back and make sure we answered Diana's questions. You okay with the answers and all that, Diana?
For what? Oh, the accessibility, even better than I dreamed. Yes, very
Okay.
good. I know how to do research.
Okay, good. We threw a lot out, and I was just wondering, make sure it made sense.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to thank Kevin for asking for a definition of Sherlock, even though I'm sure he knows what it is. And in
Oh
fact,
yeah,
you kind
I just put it in there. I knew
yeah,
what it
you kind of
was.
put it in there. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good meeting, people.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.
Bye
Thanks,
now.
Tony. Great job.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Tony, thanks.